Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Voices of Forestry podcast. I'm your host, Seth Stevenson, the communications coordinator with the Arkansas Forestry Association. And today, we're going to be talking about the Be Pro, Be Proud program, which is actually right next door to us here at the AFA office. And before we get into that, I do want to thank our sponsors this month, Farm Credit, for their support of the show. We're going to hear a little bit more from them later on in this episode. But for now, I am joined by returning guest, my boss, Max Braswell, the Executive Vice President of AFA, and Andrew Parker, who's the Executive Director of Be Pro, Be Proud. Gentlemen, thank you guys for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Seth, it's good to be back. Thanks for letting me come back again.
Well, and Max, I don't mean to kind of like push you out a little bit here for a second, but since we have heard your history and you've been on the show a couple times, we're going to let Andrew kind of take the wheel here first. Andrew, can you just kind of let the people know who you are and what your professional history?
I want to hear about Mac's history.
We've got plenty of episodes with Mac's history in it, for sure.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity that's come from the partnership that has occurred between the Arkansas Forestry Association and Be Pro, Be Proud. How did we get here? Well, I think everything that we all do, there's a little bit of ourselves that is sprinkled into it. And I was a pretty average performing student, not because I wasn't capable of more, but because sitting still inside of a classroom was not the place where I was finding success. So throughout my entire life, my dad would always say, son, you're capable of anything you want to do, but you got to go figure out what that is. And maybe you ought to think about going to get a skill. I heard that my whole life. And the entire time I heard it, I thought, there's no way I am going to be one of those people that goes to get that job that you see on TV being advertised to go to DeVry or one of the technical schools. I am not that guy. I'm going to go do the things that are going to make me rich. And really that sort of idea in my mind carried forward throughout most of my educational years. And so I pursued a 4-year degree and I pursued a law degree, and both were challenging. I achieved a finance degree and got my law license and all of those things, but I was never really satisfied with any of it. Coming to the state chamber, I've been at the state chamber since 2012, and around 2013, 14, we began the effort to try to have a conversation with companies about the state chamber. We brought legislators and past members and current members, prospective members, dues-paying members of the state chamber together to try to showcase the things we had accomplished in the legislative session and also what was on the horizon. What ended up happening was an entire conversation focused on the needs that companies had across the state, large and small, rural, urban. It didn't make any difference. Everybody was facing significant numbers of most important people for the success of these businesses were about to retire. The pipeline of talent coming in was insufficient, and there was a big disconnect between what was being taught in a technical space and what the companies needed. And so we began to chart the course to try to find a legislative solution to improve the delivery of technical education at a post-secondary level. And legislation was presented in 2015 to accomplish that goal. And we did not, because there were a lot of different things that were in place that prevented us from being able to find that kind of success. And there wasn't much appetite amongst policymakers, post-secondary educators, K-12 educators, the public in general, over the idea that technical education ought to be pursued as options of first choice. They really ought to just be that backup for those kids that aren't college material. And I was probably one of those kids that really wasn't quote-unquote college material. Fortunately, there's a lot of students that will hear that, have the same experience that I've had, and will think, well, I'm not going to be that kid. Be Pro, Be Proud was born with a little bit of all of that mixed into it, based on the idea that there are technical careers that should be pursued as options of first choice, because the businesses across this country, and in the forestry sector, there's some really cool stories of folks who have put themselves in a position to pursue the core competencies of this industry, who then led companies to become some of the greatest titans of the forestry industry in the country, if not the whole world. And that's the story that these folks play out every single day.
Well, and it sounds like you guys had similar conversations that we're having with some of our folks, our bigger company folks, of, hey, the workforce just isn't there. What do we do to change that? So that's kind of what you guys did, was find a way to set out and introduce these students to these technical skill trade jobs.
And I will dispute the idea that the talent isn't there. The talent is just asleep to the idea that these technical roles, which are the entry points into most companies across most sectors, are just things that are overlooked for a lot of reasons. They're discouraged by parents. They're not identified by schools. They're just completely unknown. We go do the things that we know, much in a large part based on what society is putting in front of us, and most of that historically is not these things.
So what are you guys doing? How are you guys going about changing this, introducing, or to use your metaphor, waking up the students to these potential jobs after high school?
A lot. And I think that the secret sauce for us is just the volume of work, and the idea that in order to be able to effectively engage and persuade any audience to do anything, you have to put it in front of them. You have to make it tangible. We began Be Probably Proud in 2016 with a 44-foot gooseneck trailer that had 6 simulator stations on board and occupied about 200 square feet of air-conditioned, heated space. So the summers and winters were pretty tough for the teams that were on those trucks. And those simulators provided an opportunity for students to put their hands on some very rudimentary things that might help expose them to some of the key pieces that are representative of different careers in different sectors. We upgraded in 2019 to turn that 40-foot gooseneck trailer into a 53-foot double expandable trailer that went from 200 square feet to 1,000 square feet, and 6 very basic things to about 14 really highly engaging virtual reality, fully immersive kinds of tools used by industry sectors across the state to train people for careers in different professions of high demand. We have about 1,000 students, those trucks visit middle schools and high schools across the state, day in and day out. There are 175 days of a school year in Arkansas, give or take a couple of days. And we are active. I have one of those B-Pro mobile workshops on a middle school or high school campus about 150 of those 175 days. We've added a second truck because the demand has been so high, and with 2 trucks touring the state year-round, we still have about 250 schools on a waiting list, which represents about another full year of a waiting list. To help the point, I think the demand for information is incredible, and these tools, and to the question, these tools, these trucks, the teams that operate these vehicles are the key sauce to the success, and that's how we engage the student audiences and help persuade them that these are careers that they should pursue.
Well, and those trucks, are kind of hard to miss too when y'all are out and about. And I think it's different. I remember going to school when I was in high school, and it's easy to hand a kid a piece of paper that inevitably they're going to throw away or going to get lost in their backpack somewhere. But to have the VR, I think that's the big game changer too, is having a VR thing where kids can have a kind of tactile experience with something to get an idea of what a job in a certain field could be. I think that's a big key change that has happened over the years. Am I wrong in saying that, or is assuming that at all?
It is absolutely correct, and every audience of all age groups has the same level of experience. These things are designed to be engaging. They are informative, but they're also very engaging, and it is a much stronger way to affect change versus what you may or may not be able to accomplish through stuff that's put in people's hands or putting it on social media or on a website. These things do have no competition for those students' attention during the period of time that they're on board. And if we do our jobs well, they leave with the idea in their mind that these are paths to incredible success because most professions across the sectors we promote all pay entry wages that are, in some cases, multiples of our per capita income in the state. And they leave with that idea in mind, and they're carrying it back to the classroom, and the educators who fill out surveys, which we collect every day, report that it has had the impact we have been interested in creating.
So I want to kind of come back to you, Max, a little bit. I'm going to ask you a question as if I don't actually work here and haven't been a part of these conversations. But what was it that got AFA's attention into? I mean, besides having our folks come to us and say, "Hey, there's not a demand or not a big pool of potential workers. We need to change that." I guess what was the draw for AFA to get involved with Be Pro, Be Proud?
Well, Seth, we've touched on it a little bit, but from our perspective, I think we understood that the need for identifying this next generation of work-ready employees was out there. As an association, we didn't have the capability of doing that at the volume where we could really make a difference. What we saw in Be Pro, Be Proud was finally there was an effort where someone had dedicated the resources to really build the volume. I don't know whether that's the right word or not, or to coalesce a lot of efforts out there into something that truly could be effective. And that's what we were looking for. We were looking for something that would actually help us, or we could see moving the needle. And I think Andrew kind of alluded to that you can actually measure the progress. Otherwise, we would have just been spinning our wheels. We also, we had talked about in the context of workforce development, but also just in the context of our sector, what could we get involved in that this next generation of potential employees would look at and say, you know what, that's pretty cool. Forestry is pretty interesting. And you can't find anything much cooler than those two mobile workshops that go out to these schools. We've already talked about the visual aspect, the hands-on aspect. So from that perspective, we were able to be a part of a program where young people would come in and they could see and they could kind of generate a level of excitement about the potential of the jobs that were in our forestry sector, but also the entire spectrum of jobs that they might have access to. Because it doesn't have to just be on that forestry simulator on that truck to touch our industry. Every job almost that's represented out there, you can find in a forest products manufacturing facility, probably in a sawmill or a paper mill. We need welders, and we need folks that are operating heavy equipment, and we need folks that know about electronics and IT, and all of those jobs, they're represented on or through the Be Pro, Be Pro program, Be Pro, Be Proud program. And so it just was an exciting, common sense, absolutely mind-blowing opportunity for us to be involved in something that was already out there, that was growing, and would allow us to partner in it and take the proper role to help our forestry sector get more involved.
All right, well, gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break right here and hear a little bit more from our sponsors, Farm Credit.
Farm Credit understands all things ag, including timber. Rural America has trusted Farm Credit for reliable, long-term financing for more than 100 years. Financing farms, timber, rural homes, agribusinesses, and more is all they do, which means they do it really well. Farm Credit is committed to the timber industry. They have experienced staff who understand the financing needs of timber producers and timber operations. Call Farm Credit today for long-term competitive rates that'll support your timber operation success. Farm Credit of Western Arkansas, the timber lending specialist, equal housing lender.
And thank you once again to Farm Credit for their continued support of the show. Now, I should clarify that our becoming a part of Be Pro Be Proud was not just an AFA solo endeavor. This was a multi-group project with our members. And Max, I'm going to let you explain this because you kind of led the charge on this, becoming a part of the program. So can you kind of explain what exactly all that took for us to even be a part of Be Pro Be Proud?
Yeah, and we've already mentioned you can't get involved in a workforce development program unless you're hearing from your members that there's a need there. And so the same members within our organization that expressed interest or a need, we had a number of those folks step up and help fund the program. Some of them worked through our Education Foundation to help us provide funding to Be Pro Be Proud, and these were, primarily one of the biggest supporters of the program nationally is Weyerhaeuser, a fantastic company, one of our, if not our largest member. They've gotten involved with Andrew and his organization, really, like we say, at a national basis. But we also have folks, smaller sawmill operations, Wilson Brothers and Risen, who actually came out to a stop and participated. We ask folks to get involved in any way. And then as that grew, we saw folks like Canfor Southern Pine. We know that our Green Bay packaging friends in Morrilton, International Paper, Georgia Pacific, the Domtar facility down in Ashdown got involved in the program. And so we have begun to build that sort of coalition within the forestry sector that is involved in supporting the program in multiple ways. And we want to be able to take those AFA members, get them more and more involved in Be Pro Be Proud, not just from a funding perspective, but from actually getting their folks out when the trucks show up at their schools and being able to tell their story, to interact with the students, to work with them. That's going to be key. But we certainly have had an involvement from the forestry sector. We want it to grow and continue to just multiply so that we can really truly make a difference out there. I'm pleased to be able to work with Andrew. I think as a member of the Associated Industries of Arkansas board, which is very much related to the Be Pro Be Proud board. I sit in on both of those meetings and try to contribute where I can. I'm not sure it's been a tremendous contribution, but that's where the folks that are coming together that really have a passion for this program to make sure that it's on the right track and growing, and they serve as resources for Andrew and his excellent team. And it's just really been a great experience for us that, again, we're just getting started. We want to look back years from now and say, we were there early in the program, and it really made a difference for our forestry sector.
So, Andrew, can you give us just kind of a quick rundown of what happens when the trucks show up at a school? What does that day look like for not only your team, but the students there as well?
So our tour teams have awfully long days during the school year. They will arrive about 2 hours before a school day begins, call it 8 o'clock in the morning. When the school day starts, they're arriving around 6 a.m. And they are setting up the truck. It takes about 90 minutes for the setup to take place to make sure everything's ready for students to come on board. And as soon as the school bell rings, teachers will start bringing students on board that truck. A student will spend about 45 to 55 minutes on board. About 5 or so minutes will be spent with the tour team. And these tour teams are really specifically selected. We want them to be young enough to be relevant to the audiences, the student audiences they're talking to. Students will smell nonsense, not the right word I want to use, but that's the most appropriate one. They will smell it from a mile away. So you have to have people on board that are relatable and credible and have had this experience so they can talk from a perspective of experience. And they'll spend a few minutes giving the overview and what the impact is and why it's important to those students. And then we will let those students spend the next 40 minutes or so exploring different simulators that are covering the transportation, construction, utility, forestry, manufacturing spaces, and how all those things interact and overlap. And at the end of that, we will bring those students back together and encourage them to take the action step that we have, which is join the movement. Join the movement is the term we use to describe the student providing us their information, parent information, school information. What did they see that's of interest, so that we can continue the conversation with them once they leave. And so we can provide that kind of information to our partners, associations, companies, post-secondary training programs, so that they can also become part of the conversation with these interested students about what those next steps can be. And that's what we do day in and day out. And we've been doing that for about 7 years, and we've had over 200,000 students come through a workshop in Arkansas alone.
Well, and that's a kind of brings me to my next point, is that this program has kind of expanded outside of Arkansas, correct? You guys are in other states doing similar things, right? Where all is Be Pro Be Proud located?
We launched in Arkansas in 2016. We launched in Georgia and South Carolina in 2020, in North Carolina in 22, Tennessee and New Mexico in 23. So we're in 6 states all combined, and we're very excited about what the next 12 months might bring in terms of what that national network of states looks like. And there's the reason that it's happening is because it just works. The interaction is impactful. The resources that exist are top notch, and the team that supports it is dedicated and focused on trying to make the change occur that will hopefully ultimately put us out of a job.
Well, let me ask you this as we kind of start wrapping up here. Did you ever imagine you guys would be where you're at currently almost 10 years ago in 2015 when you kind of got this ball rolling?
If Randy Zook, our president, thought this might happen, he probably would have fired me to save himself the trouble. No, we absolutely did not. When we began to put words on a blank piece of paper that led to Be Pro Be Proud, we thought it would be a 2-year, $200,000 effort. That was nearly 10 years ago and nearly $10 million ago.
Wow. Okay. And what are some of the reactions that you guys have seen, or I guess heard or received from students, teachers, parents from the, many different visits that you guys have had over those years?
You almost have to read it to believe it. We sit so close to this that we lose sight of the impact that it has every single day. But the feedback that we hear from educators who are responding to surveys is absolutely 100% glowing. Most of it's about the interest that the team has in helping those students find success. But we have the survey results include students have a changed idea about pursuing a technical career as options of first choice. Students are choosing to remain in school because of this experience, which is a pretty powerful thing, not only for that individual, but for every individual around those students. From the students themselves, we are now beginning to see signs of we're in post-secondary programs, we're in careers that were born out of this truck experience. There's a whole lot of students who come up and see the brand on our shirts and say, I saw it at my school and I remember this experience and it was really cool, and where the path takes them. So the feedback universally has been nothing short of really, really spectacular.
And now one thing too that it just popped in my head that I want to touch on before we again wrap this up is you guys are doing your school visits, but you also have draft days, correct? Can you just kind of give us a quick rundown of what a draft day is? Because that's actually getting some of the partners, the companies involved, correct?
That's correct. So many students came through the trucks and have said, I like it, I want to do it. Don't waste my time with this onboarding process. Just point me in the right direction. And that became a number so large that we couldn't really manage it very well. Draft days was an answer to that problem that we saw might have a chance of success. In 2022, we piloted the effort in Northeast Arkansas, and the effort is focused around trying to position high school seniors who are about to graduate with employers based on a matching need and interest, needs from the companies, interest of the students. We wanted that to be as constructive as possible, so we implemented an aptitude and interest assessment. We put in place workshops for resume building and interview workshops so that the student really wouldn't throw up on the interviewer when they're sitting in front of them for the first time. Might be the first interview those kids have ever had in their lives. Making sure that all the steps are taken that we can take to make those constructive. 168 seniors sat for 600 or so interviews. That's 3 or more per student, which we schedule for those students based on matching interests and needs. And then we just let the conversation lead where it's going to lead. There was so much success in year 1, we said, let's do it in year 2. 1 location turned into 4. In 2023, 770 seniors sat for over 2,400 interviews. As we move from 23 to 24, we'll have draft day events in 8 locations, including South Arkansas and El Dorado. We have 145 high schools participating. We have 1,800 seniors that have registered. We have over 120 companies across the state that will participate in 1 or more locations, and we anticipate roughly 6,000 interviews to take place over between the 1st of March and the end of April, when all of these events will take place.
And I'm glad you're giving all these numbers, because this kind of just leads to our point that you guys have made, is that these are quantifiable results. And, it's easy to say, oh, I gave 1,000 students a piece of paper with some information about trade careers, but having these draft days with kids actually sitting down for interviews leading to potential careers is something different entirely. So I'm glad you're throwing out all these big, fantastic numbers for us.
The expectation is very high, and the demand for producing quantifiable results is very high. Max, other board members, the Office of Skills Development here in Arkansas, that has been a huge financial supporter of the events, expect results. And we appreciate the scrutiny and the expectation and the demand of you either going to meet it or you're going to go do something else. So we hope we do it.
All right. Well, guys, is there anything else that y'all want to add before we wrap this up?
I'm grateful for the opportunity and the support from the Forestry Association and Max and the whole team. We're excited about the road ahead.
And Seth, I just want to say that I think that this is an important program, and it's an important shift in thinking, where now we're coming back to the appreciation and the understanding of the importance of these technical careers in our state. And it's something that we missed, we stepped away from when I was in high school. And I think it just gives us the opportunity to let a young person know that they can pursue a career like this, be a respected member of their community, build a life for their family. It has a huge impact on the rural communities of our state, which is most of them. That's where our facilities are located. And again, I think it's just the best vehicle, no pun intended, with the mobile workshop that we've seen to be able to really, really make a difference out there.
To that point, there are the greatest range of success in this country was created by the people that do these things. We don't have to look very far to see really signs of that in Arkansas. J.B. Hunt is the unofficial poster child of everything we're talking about, because this was a guy that did, I'm not sure what the reasons were why he did what he did, but he began with 1 truck and then he ended up with more than one at the end of the story. Lots of chapters in between. This was an entrepreneur with a technical skill set who applied it to a business and then created something that made him and his family one of the greatest titans of this entire country, if not the whole world. And that's going to happen again. This body of students will be the next generation of fortune creators, and we're gonna have the front row seat to watch it happen.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Andrew, I know we had to shuffle you around a little bit with some unexpected meetings, but I appreciate you giving us a little bit of your time today to kind of talk about what you guys are doing over literally just a stone's throw away from us. So thank you.
Thank you.
And Max, as always, of course, thank you. I have to say that, for my job's sake, but no, thank you for coming in and kind of giving us this perspective from AFA, because you have been, again, kind of the leader of this movement for our association. after speaking with a lot of different of our pretty big members. So thank you for coming in and talking as well.
You bet, Seth. Keep it up.
And we want to thank you guys for joining us as well. We want to make sure we give another special shout out and thank you to our sponsor this month, Farm Credit. We really appreciate their support of the show over these last couple of years. And we want to also give a shout out and a thank you to some guy named Rob McCormick for the use of our theme song, The Same Love. That's off of his album, The Folkster. You can find more of his music on Spotify. And as always, we'll have a link to his official website in the description of this episode. And I should mention, we'll also make sure to get Be Pro Be Proud's website linked in this description as well. So if people are curious, if you're curious, you can find more information on what they're doing, kind of where they're going to be. And like I said, thank you guys for joining us again this month. Make sure you come back next month when we'll have a new topic, a new discussion, and a new Voice of Forestry.